So hello Linda from 23andMe, so your co-founder. This company, you just gave us a great talk on your company, and I just wanted to know more about, you know, the next trends you see in sequencing, and you know, where do you see your company in like 2 or 3 years?
Well, I think genetic information is just going to become ubiquitous. It's just going to be everywhere, and it will be used for all sorts of different reasons. And I think as a society, we will all debate this together of what is the proper use and not the proper use. But my hope is that we retain sort of this element of an internet-like openness about genetic data, and try to remove a lot of the exceptionalism that seems to apply specifically to genetic data, which we don't know why that is, and it's a discussion we need to have with a lot of people involved, ethicists and doctors and researchers and patients, just to make sure that we're all talking together, as opposed to the experts that are perceived to be the people in the know aren't really controlling the conversation. We all need to have a voice in how genetic data is shared, used, and taken advantage of to improve health and move more toward a preventive model.
It seems that the technology is ready at least for genotypage, not for the full sequencing. But it's really like the main roadblock is a problem of policy. And what do you think about all that?
Well, exactly. The data and the technology always seems to be well ahead of the debate around the ethics and you know, the applicability of the information as well. And full sequencing is great, but we're still going to have to do a lot of research to understand what the rare variants mean, what all of the implications are of these things, and it all requires large data sets. So to have freedom, to have accessibility, I think personally from a consumer perspective, and not having to go through different loops and jump through all the hoops of whether medical people own it or research people own it, it's our data, and to give us and empower us to have access to it and then share it with people we deem worthy of it, then that's really the model I think that will get us ahead the fastest.
And do you think we are ready in terms of software, for example, and like all the tools we can have to manage this information and get the most out of it? Because we see, it seems that we already have some, you know, a lot of information, but it's really hard to understand the data and to make sure we make the most out of it as well.
Oh, I think that's an area of huge opportunity, and the whole space of bioinformatics, and the people who really can understand that and then interpret it, provide an interpretive layer that everyday people can understand. I really think that's where that's the exciting opportunity for people who want to do startups or not-for-profits or whatever. But the more people who go into that, the better. And
this morning you talked to us about your brainstorm project. Could you tell me more about it?
Yeah, so it's really sort of an extension of what we are applying at 23andMe, of empowering people to have access to their data and then share information about themselves. Brainstorm will not provide that interpretive layer so much like 23andMe does. I see that really much more as a commercial opportunity, but really to bring people together through social networks, so appeal to them through places where they're hanging out online all the time, and give them ways to really start monitoring their own brain health. And then as we're able to get more genetic sequence data combined with that, the hope is that we'll be able to start tracking brain health much more effectively and much more quantitatively, and hopefully give people scores or cues that they might be on a decline, and then as things are developing that can hopefully maintain their brain health, whether it is through exercise programs, diets, certain pharmaceutical approaches.
I guess one more question is just, so the 2008 Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act passed, and in the United States we have extensive genetic non-discrimination legislation at both the federal and the state level. And I'm wondering to what extent you think that these fears over genetic discrimination are valid, and to what extent you think that they're more sort of, I don't know, sci-fi fantasy.
Well, it's like a lot of things, that it's sort of an unknown more than a true fear, I think. Just sort of like terrorism and things that are out there and people are afraid, but they can't really put their finger on what it is exactly they're afraid of or what the outcomes are going to be. And you know, the more we have discussion around that, and one of the things that we often ask people is, what if somebody did get your genetic code? What do you think they honestly could do to you, short of, you know, impacting your insurance? And that's where GINA being put into law protects on health insurance and you know, and employment, but you know, we still have room for legislation to protect. But I think, you know, I think it's just going to become so prevalent in society that it just does sort of fade into the background, and hopefully all the benefits that we get from having access to it will outweigh any of the downsides. And it's kind of like the internet, right? We have access to tons and tons of data. It's mostly good, but there are a lot of things that can happen that are not so good. And so building in protections as well, I think, is really important to make sure we're all comfortable with it.
Linda, thank you so much for everything. It was a really interesting interview.
Thank you
and
very
see you
much.
soon.